Today on What Went Wrong, we celebrate Halloween. Hi, I'm Brett Mauser, and can you believe it's been a year since our last Halloween special? We sat down and talked about horror films.
Horror films, right.
Today, we debated how we were going to handle this one. I think we've come up with a good one. Just talking about the good and the bad of Halloween movies.
Yeah.
Now, I was gonna throw this out there. I particularly think that Die Hard is a Christmas movie.
Yeah, it's a Christmas movie.
Absolutely. So, I mean, and I have the official 20th Century Fox trailer to prove it.
This Christmas. You got it. Christmas movie.
Now, in terms of a Halloween movie, it doesn't necessarily have to be a horror movie. One of the examples that I brought up was like Hocus Pocus.
Yeah.
Now, there's some scary stuff here and there, but it's
scary for 5-year-olds.
Yeah. It is a Halloween movie.
It is.
So it's not just a movie that takes place at Halloween, but it's a tradition that maybe on every Halloween you go and you watch this movie. Like for Christmas, my dad always watches A Christmas Story.
I watch The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
Yeah, I've got my DVD of those.
I do too. That's one of my Halloween things I do.
Yeah,
you know?
So it could be thematically revolving around Halloween.
Yeah.
Or it could be just something that has your typical, some people could watch the Dark Universe stuff, the Mummy and the Frankenstein, and those kind of movies that are just...
Yeah, I think Halloween, because the concept of Halloween is to scare yourself or to scare other people, boo, and all that kind of stuff, scary ghosts and blah, blah, blah. And I think the idea, because the way I've always looked at Halloween, I love Halloween. If I'm working on Halloween, I'm irritated as about it. I always try to not work on Halloween. I've been arranging my flight schedules as long as I've had the seniority to not work October 31st.
Well, I remember how pissed people were last year when you had a full moon on Halloween, on the day that you got an extra, on the daylight savings time, you got an extra hour, and it was a Saturday.
Yeah.
And then everybody was locked up.
I have to admit, we were not locked up. We said, F it. Not only were we not locked up, I was standing, I've worn it here before, but my Nightmares baseball jersey.
Yeah.
I was wearing my Nightmares baseball jersey. I had a black ball cap with skull and crossbones on it. I was wearing some tan pants that were all rolled up with black socks, and I was an old baseball player, And I got dressed up, and I went and bought a bunch of candy, and I had some friends come over to my house, and I was like, hey, if kids show up, great. If the kids don't show up, it. I got lots of candy. Dude, we had more kids come to my house than whoever, and I'm standing there, hey, how you doing? Come on in, throwing candy at kids. Here you go, you little bastard, kind of stuff like that. And we had a great time. So you and your locked up. We did Halloween. We're doing Halloween because it is. It's one of those. I remember years ago they had this whole years ago. They had this whole thing to where Halloween was bad, and some churches were protesting against it. And I'm like, it's Halloween, guys. Seriously, that's the whole point of Halloween is fun. It's for kids. It was before I knew you, but we used to have pizza parties at my house. We'd go trick or treating with my friends. We used to dress up in school, and even in high school, we would still do put on masks. I mean, we didn't dress up necessarily like we did in middle school and elementary school, but we still did goofy Halloween stuff, We would still dress up and say to hell with it, just do whatever we wanted to do. It's fun, okay? Now, my personal opinion, the movies should reflect that. But you also can have the scary movies to scare you, because that's the idea, is to scare yourself in a fun way, right? And so you can have Hocus Pocus, Halloween Town was one of them. Scooby-Doo. Come on now. Scooby-Doo. Get me here, my Scooby fans. But at the same time, old Twilight Zone episodes.
Oh, yeah.
I love that. Twilight Zone episodes. And you've also got, what was it? Are You Afraid of the Dark? Like on Nickelodeon back in the day.
Goosebumps.
Goosebumps was one of those things. And then, of course, Tales from the Dark Side, which is another one of those syndicated shows that would come on late at night, like 11 o'clock, midnight, that kind of stuff. And they were fantastic. That's the stuff I like. I love the goofy, fun, scary stuff,
Pick any TV show, and it seems like they had a Halloween episode. Yeah. I remember I was living in Dallas, and I was 6 or 7, and it was Halloween, and we had just watched, or they just had like the Little House on the Prairie episode. And they had like the Headless Horseman.
Headless Horseman.
And I remember going to my childhood friend's house to knock on the door, and it had one of those, it was not a sliding glass door, but it was a regular door, and it had the glass door, and I just in my head saw that door opening up and that headless horseman standing there, and I just imagined it there, and I was like, nope, I'm out. They weren't coming to the door. I'll go. So there was that even especially as a kid.
Yeah, and people are like, oh, Halloween's evil, it's of the devil, and blah blah blah. I was like, you're missing the point. I mean, yes, there are some people who take it to a dark place.
Yeah,
yes.
They don't sell black cats at the Humane Society around Halloween because
right.
There's sick people that'll go out there and do stuff to black cats.
And you're right, that's twisted and awful and sick. Okay, but the exceptions don't prove the rule. Okay, just because there are some sick f***s out there doesn't mean the rest of us get to miss out on Halloween. I love the decorations. I love the candy, let's be honest. I love the candy. But I also just love the fun that comes along with it. The TV shows, you have the traditional, if you will, Halloween, Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, Hocus Pocus, Halloween Town, the Disney shows, and of course all the Halloween episodes from all the different sitcoms, and however many there are, and then you've got the scary movies that have become, or the characters of the scary movies, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, the Living Dead, not the Living Dead, the 1950s and 60s, right, yeah. The serials, Nosferatu.
I was a teenage werewolf.
Right. Even some people say Teen Wolf with Michael J. Fox. Yeah. I'm like, okay, sure, why not? And we're not discriminatory at the Halloween Town, movie house. We'll bring them all. But so you have the traditional Halloween ones, and I do not include the slasher movies in that. Now, some people like Halloween itself is one of those. Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, though, that's a weird one, because it's got the slasher gore, but the character's amazing.
Yeah, it's got the one-liners and
was it Bill England? What was his name?
Robert Englund.
Robert Englund was amazing as Freddy Krueger. It's hard to explain. Because I was 12 the first time I saw that Nightmare on Elm Street. I had to watch it on HBO when no one was around because we're not allowed to, But the first time I watched that, because I was expecting kind of a slasher, and there's blood in it. But not like the hacking with machetes and that kind of crazy stuff. There was with the blades, and she gets cut, and I remember Rob Lowe explodes on the ceiling and all kinds of crazy weird stuff. But it was the weird, creepy, strange dream world, supernatural thing about it that made that movie so good. Plus,
it's a unique premise.
It was a unique premise. We'd never someone who kills you only in your dreams. What? Yeah. So I allow Nightmare on Elm Street. It's not a slasher movie. It's not a kids movie, and it's not even really a traditional Halloween movie. But I'll put it in there. I'll watch it.
Going back to you talking about the fun, I remember growing up and you could probably look at this and see that I was going to become a filmmaker. I would do the Halloween haunted house. I wanted to have the haunted house and have people come create the yard. I had drawings and illustrations of building these tunnels, and people come in and get their candy, and then there's this wolf man or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember I got yelled at so much by my mother one year because on Halloween night before my parents got home, I put a red light bulb in the porch, and and then the lights come on and whatnot, and then I'm upstairs, and my mother comes storming up, yelling and screaming at me. I have no idea what she's talking about, and she says, "You put a red light on our porch." I'm like, "Yeah, it's Halloween. I'm decorating."
Yeah.
And then she had to explain to me that the yellow light or the red light was the prostitution.
Oh.
It was a whorehouse. The whorehouses would have the red lights. And I was 10, 11, but it was the house. It was the house in Kingwood. It was with the pillars that I grew up in,
I remember
that
that. Yeah.
And put the red light in the porch, and I remember that from Halloween. I got yelled at because I put a red light in the porch light on Halloween.
It's like, Mom, I'm gonna go ahead and probably say they know that whores don't live here.
Yeah.
It's Halloween, and they're gonna get that.
Yeah. And like a couple houses down the road have.
It's Halloween. It's Halloween, guys.
So and it's not like there were going to be people knocking on the door. Hey,
hey, baby. Okay, so here's a good one then. We got the fun ones. Haunted Mansion, which came out in 2003 with Eddie Murphy. But it's Disney's Haunted Mansion, which has long been associated with the whole Halloween and Halloween fun. Nightmare Before Christmas. Is it a Halloween movie or is it a Christmas movie? I say both. Because they live in Halloween Town.
Yeah.
But he goes to Christmas Town. So you know what? We're doing both of them. Thanksgiving's got nothing. But Halloween and Christmas movie, hell yeah. We're going with that, right?
I'd agree.
I'd agree with that too, man. Pet Sematary, one of the spooky ones. That's kind of, Stephen King movies in general, okay? Because the reason I like Stephen King movies, some Stephen King movies, not all of them. Some of them, Langoliers. But The Shining, Pet Sematary, spooky, scary, not a lot of blood, more of the psychological kind of thriller. And that's part of the scaring yourself, right? And we all know how I feel about the little girls in The Shining. That's part of the scaring yourself part. So I go with that one.
See, I think that's where we'd set there are horror films that I wouldn't consider and Shining is one of them that I wouldn't put into a Halloween movie. And again, this is completely subjective.
Well, it's not a Halloween movie. It really isn't. Yeah. You're right.
And because that and The Prince of Darkness are the only movies that have ever scared me. The Prince of Darkness was a John Carpenter movie.
Oh, okay.
There was a jump scare at the end that got me.
Yeah.
But and it was just so creepy and whatnot. But it was just like Shining was too cerebral to me to be a Halloween movie.
Okay.
I don't think you should have to think on Halloween.
That is actually okay. I can agree with that premise also. So maybe I want to change my mind on that. I didn't think about that, but you may be right there.
Because you can look really deep into The Shining, and I can't remember whether I showed you.
You did.
Clip of
you
Wendy,
did.
The Wendy theory.
The Wendy theory.
How she's the psycho.
Trippy, and I love it.
Really crazy.
I love it. I actually like that.
But even before then, you had to look and try to analyze that movie and figure out what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was from the guy who did 2001. Of course, it was going to be.
Right.
So that's where I stand on that. And Prince of Darkness was that same way too. It was very ethereal and very, Jesus Christ was an alien. He was coming to warn people many years ago, and trying to keep. And the Prince of Darkness, the devil, was actually an alien entity from a multi-dimension and everything. But it's still a horror movie where these guys are stuck in a church and all the homeless people are turning into the demonic possessed people, and bugs are eating people alive, and they're vomiting on each other. And it's really sick, disgusting, and creepy.
It's a John Carpenter movie.
It's a John Carpenter movie. Love it to death, but it's like it scares the shit out of me. But I wouldn't, because they have this thing with a video camera that to this day gives me the chills and the creeps.
Which was that?
They would fall asleep and they would dream, and they'd be getting signals from the future.
Oh.
And it's the devil's taken over that church, so it's somebody in the future sending back a video camera of and you just see the entrance to the church and the shadowy figure coming out, and you can't see it and you don't know what it is, but it's evil, and it's just creepy, and then they'd wake up.
I love creepy. I gotta watch that friggin' movie. Well, there's a bunch of them. So The Shining. I'm gonna change my. You're right. I'm gonna go with you on that. There's so many. I can lose one for Halloween. It's fine. Well, it's also you got that one. You got Poltergeist.
Okay.
The Grudge, The Ring, It. Probably not Halloween movies, even though they're spooky movies. 13 Ghosts. Now, they had an old one back in the 50s that was using that first. They had little glasses you'd put on, and things would be happening in the background, which I thought was cool. And that kind of went with that, and the one that had Monk, whose name totally
Tony Shalhoub.
Tony Shalhoub.
I was gonna say that was the only redeeming quality of that remake.
Oh, and Shaggy was in it too.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Well, no, even though he died.
Yeah.
Spoilers. I watched the other one. I was like, because it was years ago. I was in flight school. And I went to go watch this. I went to go rent this movie, and I brought it home and plugged it in. And all of a sudden, it's this old '50s thing, and I was like, oh, maybe this is the precursor to the movie. And then it just kept going and going. I was like, oh, this is the movie, and I was so happy. And I took it back, and I was like, yeah, this is the old one. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I like it. And now I can't find the mother anywhere, and I'm so irritated about that. Then I watched the new one, and I was like, okay, this is so much worse. Give me the old one back. Because the old one was creepy and scary and spooky, and I loved it. What about, like, the Scary Movie franchise? Because those are comedies.
You have to follow it. If you're gonna qualify Halloween as fun, then yeah, I think you need to.
Same
throw
thing
those in
with
there.
Dracula Dead and Loving It.
Yeah.
Because Leslie Nielsen.
Yeah.
Come on.
Because Halloween is meant to be
Mel
fun
Brooks.
and not taken too seriously
Right.
in terms of death and mayhem and whatnot.
Right.
Those are, satirical. Yeah, so I definitely say those.
Good. I like those a lot. Okay, but also let's look at like Psycho. Now, it's a traditional scary movie. Not Halloween, but it is one of the first and best scary movies of its age. I mean, really good ones. But it is not fun.
Yeah.
But it's so good.
I think now you're getting into the territory where, again, a lot of this is subjective.
Of course, it's all subjective.
I think that going back to tradition would have to play a hand in this. Even though we say films like Shining or Prince of Darkness don't qualify as it, but if you watched Psycho or you watched The Shining every Halloween with your parents growing up or something like that,
Right.
then yeah, I'd have to say that qualifies them as a Halloween movie.
Yeah.
Because that is a part of your tradition and
Right.
your Halloween.
But speaking outside of that.
Outside of that, I would have to say no, again, because it goes back to I don't think a Halloween movie should be a masterpiece either.
I can agree with that. Okay. If we're going to speak about Halloween movies as being fun and Halloween being a celebration for kids.
Yeah.
Then we have to look at the fact that Halloween movies would be something you could watch with your kids.
Yeah.
And probably Psycho, Amityville, the new 13 Ghosts. The old 13 Ghosts I actually would watch with my kids.
Well, because, again, especially because that was a gimmick with the 3D glasses. So that could even be qualified
That
as,
would be
as
cool.
a fun and something that's goofy and outrageous.
Okay, so here's one. Beetlejuice.
Ooh,
I know.
Because does that even follow as terrifying or scary?
It's good. Well,
other than just Tim Burton.
Tim Burton's a little weird because he also did Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah. I think this would fall under the category of, because I think you could look at some films and say across the board they would be Halloween movies like Hocus Pocus.
Right. That's without a doubt.
Yeah, and then even a film even though it's a slasher film, a film like Halloween would be considered a Halloween film, even though maybe you may not consider another slasher film like a Friday the 13th a Halloween film.
Right.
So I think there are films that would be across the board as horror films, and then you would have other subcategories that would fall under your personal tradition.
Right.
And then there would be horror films that you just push out and say no, they can't be horror.
We're going to go with we're not going to worry about personal traditions because that's personal.
If we're just going to go as an overall overreaching, this is a Halloween movie, I would probably say no. It's too.
It doesn't centralize enough on
Halloween. It
Halloween.
doesn't central enough. Yeah, and it's not enough.
It doesn't
about
relate to
ghosts
Halloween at
and
all.
Spookiness and yeah, I because I think the spookiness comes from the art direction.
Yeah.
Rather than the story itself, because
Right.
it is a comedy, and then what makes it creepy is going to be the art design.
It's a spooky comedy.
But again, I'm not going to argue with somebody who would put it on a list.
Right. I get that. Now, there's some of my favorite ones, like Watcher in the Woods, some of my Disney movies, Watcher in the Woods, Black Hole, which, creepy, spooky, but I don't think they fit in Halloween.
Yeah.
However, Watcher in the Woods might, because it's kind of nondescript as to when that falls. Although you kind of figure it's more in the spring because it's supposed to be in like England and there's no snow on the ground. Everyone's not wearing coats.
I will really throw this one out there. This is coming out of right field.
Yeah.
Is E.T. a Halloween movie?
Ooh.
Because your first instinct is, well, just because it took place at Halloween, but you got the alien and the,
and there are some kind of like creepy, spooky things that happen in it, but especially when you first meet him, because you don't know what the hell's out there.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I would say, okay, it may take place at Halloween, but it itself does not breach the subject of ghosts and goblins and scary things, like, say, Halloween Town, or there's no witches, there's no whatever. It's at the premise of kids enjoying Halloween, but the whole story is the alien. And then the relationship between the kid and the alien. Yeah. Great movie. I don't think it's a Halloween movie, even though it takes place in Halloween. But then once again...
Okay, well, that...
Hang on. I'm about to get there. Because then, let's go back to...
Die Hard.
Die Hard. Ain't nothing in that about Christmas, except that it happens at Christmas. Same thing with Home Alone. There's nothing in that about Christmas, except that it happens to be at Christmas time.
Okay, let's defend that, though, because the premise of Die Hard requires that it take place during Christmas, because they needed that Christmas party and that shutdown of everything,
right? And
the building being shut down except for that one floor,
right?
So Christmas played a major part in Die Hard.
That's true.
Whereas in E.T., it just happened to be that they happened to take E.T. out trick or treating.
Yeah.
It wasn't integral to the plot of the film.
Yeah.
You couldn't have Die Hard couldn't have taken place on June 14th.
Right.
It had to
maybe July 4th.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, then they could have called it Independence Day, but that would have screwed up the other movie.
Yeah.
Sweeney Todd, scary movie based on a Sondheim
I
play.
have a tough time putting musical on any list.
I got you. I don't think so, because there's absolutely nothing in it that has to do anything with Halloween. There's no Halloween in it at all. It's just kind of a scary premise. Mass murderer who shaves people. So I get that. And of course, the TV series we already talked about: Twilight Zone, Tales from the Crypt, Night Gallery, Tales from the Dark Side, Supernatural.
I remove myself from that argument. I've seen like one or two episodes, and
never
really
just not familiar with it.
Drew any interest to me.
I understand. I've
watched
watched
too much of a teen throb kind of a thing, so I was like,
I think at the beginning it kind of was, but as it went along, it got a lot darker and a lot more watchable. I'd say at the beginning there were definitely times I was like, but as I continued watching it, because I had friends that wanted to watch it, and it got a lot more watchable. Maybe, but then once again, I think Supernatural is more about the fighting of the demons and the dealing with with whatever else, and I don't know if I would consider it. I don't know. I don't think it's Halloween, but then again, like Ghost Whisperer isn't necessarily Halloween either, except for the Halloween episodes that they do. But I would watch a Ghost Whisperer episode or 2 or 3 or 5 at Halloween, just because it is about ghouls and goblins and ghosts. Ghosts mostly, not really ghouls or goblins. Well, ghouls, but about ghosts and everything else, and the spooky stuff that happens. Which, once again, the whole idea of it being fun is the creepy, the spooky, the weird, the scare yourself kind of fun, the Scooby-Doo kind of ghostly stuff, So it's hard to say. You got any others? We could ask the audience at home, put your scary movies. If we haven't talked about one, and you got a scary movie that you want to talk about, or say something, and you maybe want us to talk about next time, frickin' put it in the comments, and we'll talk about that. Because I would like to see. I've got a list, because people always ask me about scary movies, because I love Halloween. I'm a Halloween goofball. I love it. I love that shit. I always dress up. I always do something. I'm always doing Halloween crap at my house. So come on by. I got candy. But it's just one of those things. It's like, I like talking about Halloween scary movies. I like to talk about scary movies in general. Like last time we talked about what makes movies scary. How do you make a scary movie? And now we just kind of talk about how do you celebrate Halloween through the films you watch?
Yeah, and and that's why I steer clear of some films, because again it falls into the fun, and again you've got to categorize it by age too.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to have the teenagers who are going to want to see the slasher films, and that's going to be qualified as a Halloween film.
Right. So I think what we come up with is Halloween itself is subjective as to what you like. There are certain things I think everyone can agree is Halloween,
Yeah.
Halloweenish, Halloweenified. I don't want to say Halloweeny. That sounds weird. Frankenweenie would be one of those. Corpse Bride.
I think
Nightmare.
you're safe with anything animated that has to do with Halloween.
Nightmare Before
can be-
Christmas. Oh yeah, and of course all the Halloween stuff like Garfield's Halloween special
Yeah.
and Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, which I always talk about every year because the guys who did when him fighting the Red Baron did all the airplane stuff right. We've talked. Oh, it's freaking. Before I became a pilot, I didn't realize that, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my god. Anyway, so you got all the Garfield and all the stuff, and even like Pirates of the Caribbean. In some cases, could be Halloweenish, but not really, because
See,
they got
there are times when you'll say something like that, and I'm just like, oh, inside I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
But then I have to remind myself, hey, to each his own.
Well, like I said, I don't think it is. I think it's a swashbuckling pirate movie that happens to involve the undead.
Now, if you had a movie that had pirates and ninjas and cowboys, then I think that could qualify.
That would
as
be
a- as a
Halloween, Christmas, Easter, New Year's. That's an all year round movie. There's never a bad time for that movie.
I think we just figured out our next movie.
I think we did too.